they all have some interesting things.
Yeah.
All right, so here's Azure DevOps. So basically you can create what they call organizations. So these are containers for projects. And inside of organizations, you have all these different settings, right, that are about just like holistically what's on there. Like, for example, here's when you can say like what processes you allow, right? So this guides like your workflows, fields, things like that. So this is kind of like higher level things that you want to apply to all the projects below.
And we talked about, I mean, the value in this is that, I've talked to a customer recently who they manage separate instances so that they can keep different organizations separate, data separate. And so if I remember this correctly, this organization is the way this works in Azure DevOps is they're the isolation layer.
Yes.
I also think it would be good if we had this so that you could have users belong to organizations instead of to the instance. And I'll have a lot of settings that, especially for cloud, that are stuck in the instance configuration be available in the organization configuration. So
yeah, and these are things that we like try to have the top level group do, right? But it's like we're doing this already, but we're just kind of mixing it with group and applying special rules to like a group that's top level. So this would just be kind of formalizing that in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then inside of that, you have projects. So this is like your isolation layer, like you said, right? So, and then in here you have different projects. They're like repositories for things, right? And you can choose what you enable in them, right? So this one's not new, but you basically get like a welcome screen, which basically you do this, right? So you can say this is boards, this is repos, this is pipelines, this is test plans, artifacts, right? So it's like, what is this for, right? And it's flexible and you can like make it do one or all of them. So this is basically then within this project, you have like, you know, your repos, your pipelines, your test plans, and then boards are also here. The thing that's interesting about how they do boards is that, I'll go back to project settings, is that basically how it starts out is like you have this big container, right? When you create the project, you have what they call the default team, which is just like, I don't know, in case it's like one project, one team, right? And that's where it ends. But you can actually create, oh, here, it's over here, multiple teams. So I like created another one. I can show you what that looks like. Gabe's team. So you can assign permissions to it, right? So you can say these people are readers, these people are administrators, and there's like, these are basically baked in roles. I can send you a documentation for that.
It's fine. I can find it.
But you create a team and then you can create an area path for them. So basically it's like you're chunking up that project into different sections. And I'll show you how, like, where that applies. So I'm going to create an area path for this.
Yeah, go for it. Within a project, you can have many repositories, though, probably, and many pipelines, and like it's not just a one-to-one.
Yeah,
right?
we can go into that. Yeah. Like, yeah, you can create different repos.
Okay.
So that, yeah, you can just like have different things in here. So then if we look at work items, right, this is like everything in the project. Then if I create a new work item, let's say I'm creating an issue, which is sort of their equivalent of a, like our issue, like a story in Jira. I put it in a path and this ties it to that team. It's still within this project, but the path is kind of linked to the team concept.
Yep.
So I'll put it here, right, and save. So then when you go to boards, basically these are team views of, these are like filtered views of the entire project repository of issues. And if I am added to a single team, then I only see this board, right? I see all of them because I'm the admin here, right? But if you would see like a filter view of this. And this is where you like, you have like your epic and your issue, and you can filter and do configure team settings, right? Like these are different things that you see. This is sort of like your backlog view. And then one thing I haven't looked at is reporting. To go back to your question of like, how do I see team specific analytics, right? So how they do reporting is through these queries. Like you can do different, I don't know if you've
Yeah,
ever
I
looked at
remember
this.
this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can look at it.
So basically
But
what you would do is create different charts based on area paths, and that's your team kind of like analytics.
So what are the things that you like about this? Just curious, or that you think work well?
What I think works well is that you're separating the repository aspect from the permissions aspect. So basically what they have is you're basically creating paths, containers for issues and repos and all that, right? And separately, right, within organizations, you have users, right, which exist at this top level. And then your users are assigned to different projects, right? So you're sort of decoupling that, which I think is confusing right now, right? And then you can create groups, which are essentially just for permissions. We're kind of conflating all of that into our groups right now, right? And I think having it separate actually makes it simpler because you can specialize and make the object smaller. So that's one thing that I like about it. I like this. I think we definitely need to have this higher level of abstraction level of an organization, right? Because I think that will make things easier for us of just having this kind of special, again, like a more simple specialized object that all it does is defines boundaries, right? Kind of like what we're doing with top level groups. Then the thing that's nice for you with this is I started playing around with some of the scenarios like cross project linking of items, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because you have this higher level abstraction level at the organization, you can allow issues to sort of like commingle within that organization, right? So you can have an epic in one project that has issues basically across the whole org, if that's something that you need to do. So that's something that's nice. I don't understand yet how you would get those team level metrics like what you're describing, right? Or how that would work. I haven't played around with how this basically ties into your repository, right? Like once you have issues on one project, I don't know how that ties into repos, and that's what I was going to look at next.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the way it works is that within an issue you reference a given repository. So like if you can look at whatever you want. I'm pretty sure that that's how it works. Is like you more or less like ref. This is where the change is being made, and here's like the change request, and the change request is the issue. I don't know if that shows up in the repo view, but out of all of the the enterprise level tools that I was tested when I started at GitLab, this is one that had the best flexibility, I think, for some of that, while also like being incredibly complicated and a little bit.
Yeah, like the permissions model is very complicated. So like a story, right, is that I was working with a customer to integrate Azure DevOps to the product I used to work on. And their permissions model is actually super complicated because you have, like I was showing you, like over here in organizations, right, you have users here, and when you add them, you're assigning a permission level here, right? And then you're adding them to projects. You're adding them to groups, right? So there's like 4 or 5 levels of permissions. Is at the user level, right, when you join, and then that has like a whole chart of permissions associated to it. Then they have these like groups here that have permissions level associated with them. And then like within the project, you can have another set of permissions. So there's like nesting levels.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally spent 2 weeks trying to create a user that had the right permission level, just because it gets so confusing with how flexible it is. So that's something that I do not like.
Yeah.
As far as the project setup, the thing that's really nice that they do is like once you build these queries and you can build really nice dashboards. I'll just do like they have this really nice sort of like SQL-like UI, right? So that's really nice, and then you can like query across projects. So they have a really nice integration with Excel, right? Which the business users that I worked with loved, because it's basically like deep link, right? Like you do a bunch of stuff in Excel and it just like updates Azure DevOps, which people really liked. And then from here, basically with this data, you can create charts. I'll have to save my query. Save query. Where was it again? Oh, charts. So it's basically like Excel within Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
So that's something that was nice. And this is how you would get some of those kind of like team level metrics, but this doesn't solve for what you're trying to solve for, right? Because it also sort of there's no like explicit team assignment or anything like that, right? It derives all of the metrics and everything based on the location of items.
Yeah, but that's a team, right? Like,
But if you have a shared team, a shared repo with them, you would run into the same issue that we have.
yes, you would. But you maybe not, because you will, if one issue represents the change in the repo, the merge request, which I'm pretty sure that's how it worked last time I played with it, that merge request would be mapped to the area that the issue was, which would be the team, like the area path. Does that make sense? So,
No,
because
can
there
you
are,
explain that again?
yeah, so like let's say you go to Gabe's team in here and you have an issue. Then you open up a merge request, which I haven't gone through. We can go through the merge request process in the repos and just see what it's like. But I'm pretty sure you can associate that one merge request with the issue that's in Gabe's team
Oh, I see what you're
area
saying.
path,
Yeah.
right? So you can pull through that way. Right now, our problem is that within a project, we look at the merge requests and the issues, and we assume that everything happens in that one project. So the reporting, for example, value stream reporting and stuff, all happens based on the objects that are just within that project. So if I have my team, Gabe's team, and I go and open a merge request in a repo, there's no way to pull that data back into, map it to my area path, if that makes sense. We could figure out how to solve that, I think, fairly easily. if you like, you more or less could map which MR relates to or
Yeah,
resolves.
link it,
You know,
yeah, from the issue, right? Like have the issues all live in one area path here, right? But then the MRs can be like multiple places depending on where they
yeah.
are.
And that's kind of where I was talking about a little bit too, though. But like, given, let's use GitLab as an example, we have a project or an area path where all of our issues would live, right? That's open to the public, right? But that area path that is open to the public where all the issue lives is not my team,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I would need it to live there, and then also be able to associate it to my team, so my team could plan it, even though it doesn't live in the same area path.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking of like where, well, is it as easy as having like a team field, right? That is like a group, right? So which group owns this?
Yeah.
And then basically we have views within that group that show you all the issues that that group is assigned to.
Yes. By default, it would be the group, or it would be the group wherever the thing where the issue is created, unless somebody specifies something else, right? So they can pick something else when it's created and more or less say that the team. We didn't even call it team. We could just call it whatever we call the container or the thing, the shared namespace type thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then it would just show up there. The thing that gets complicated is what if I am in my repo, which is like the shared place, and it has a given set of milestones that are there and people who can see things, and then I have my team area path that only my team has access to, and we set an attribute on that issue that is from the shared thing because it's now been granted, it's like assigned to my team.
Mm-hmm.
Like we put an iteration on there that is not accessible to this other shared place where the issue lives.
I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
So what would the experience be? Would they see that, and then if they click on that link to go look at that iteration report, would it give them a 404? They don't have permissions. That's just the thing to think through. When
Yeah, maybe if all those things are managed at the like organization level, then you might not have that problem.
they won't all be managed at the organization level, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Sometimes they
thinking.
will.
Like, does that make sense? Yeah, it's a good point. It can be like labels, it can be like milestones, it can be a lot of things, right? Like basically anything you manage at the project or group level now.
The
Because
way
it's
that you
like it
could,
lives over there, but you want to see it here and
the
manage
way that
it
you,
here.
yeah, the way you could resolve that is maybe show the information, but don't let anybody who is not a member of the team to which the thing is assigned modify it whatsoever, or like change any of the metadata. It'd be like a guest only access to the issue. So depending on who the issue owner is, or which group or which team, whatever, they're the team that can set the metadata on the issue. I don't know. It's like I don't know how to solve for this. Oh.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking maybe it's just like a pointer to, like you can see it, you can report on. No, but if you need to be able to report on it, you have to have things like this sprint and all of that apply to it in the same way everything else, right? Because if you like, because my first thought, right, like where I was going with this is like maybe you see it, but like all the labels and milestones and whatever are still the ones for the other team, for the other area, right? But then that breaks apart when you try to do any reporting on it, right? Because now you have these like foreign things, foreign labels, foreign milestones, right? That you can't really correlate very easily to the rest of the info. So maybe what you're saying is right. Like when somebody claims it, right? When you own it, then it's almost like it lives in your area now.
Yeah. Um,
And your labels, your milestones, your epics, right? Like I don't know what the rules are, right? But basically, these are the things that apply to it now.
Yeah. I don't know if that is like makes it overly complex from a performance standpoint. So I feel like at some point we're gonna have to decide how to handle it.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the things I liked about having the repo separately here is that it just like you don't really have a choice. But then again, like we couldn't use this in I think the way it was intended, right, within GitLab, having like a public issue tracker and all that other stuff. Then we would be in the same boat where we'd have to come up with like a labeling system, that sort of thing. The other thing I like about this is separating pipelines out from repos, because pipelines, like you might only want to define one pipeline that processes all of your different repos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this basically allows you to separate everything out if you want, or put it all together if you want, the way they've set it up.
And this is sort of like what I was envisioning when you have the shared namespace with all the resources is you can enable a repo or your pipelines or just your boards if you want. And we should talk to CI/CD folks about what it would look like if they want to have pipelines that can impact many children. Because like what I could end up seeing is then you have like one hierarchy that's all your repositories, and then you could set up like rules for your pipelines at the very top level, namespace type thing that then all the children repos inherit or something. There's a lot of cool things that you could do in terms of like nesting that stuff together.
Oh yeah, that's something that is interesting. They don't have nesting rules, so that's something that we definitely have an advantage over. Like everything is flat.
Yeah.
Like they all
But yeah.
live at the same layer. You know what I mean?
Yep. All right. So that's the access problem or permissions problem, because I think in my video I also showed how right now it works fine that you can share a group or a project with another group, and people you can set what permission level you want them to be able to have so that they can see all the things. And then the next step would be like if they can see all the things, let them then assign a thing to themselves so it would show up there. And we can think through that a little bit more. But I think that would, it's a weird fringe case, but more and more organizations I'm talking to have like these shared services projects where everybody contributes, like what do they call it, intersourcing. And then they have all of their like teams where they work on all the stuff that they've been assigned, and they have separate repos over there for that they pull all the shared packages into. So
yeah, I think the more common scenario is probably the one that we talked over Slack that I believe it was a salesperson sent to you, which was you have sort of like a department, right? And within the department you have teams, and to cover the higher level epic completely, there's all different teams basically need to work on an issue for it, and then all of them combine sort of like complete the epic. But right now there's not a good way to handle that outside of creating epics within each group, right? Like
yeah, or using labels, but that's still, like if you want to go for like zero trust, then you want to be able to add people to just what they need access to, and create the things there. And so we're working on epics now. When you create an epic, you can assign it to a child group, which is a really small change, but that way you have flexibility to like push things up and down or almost change the assignment of the epic. And I think eventually the same could apply if you create an epic like at a top level group and you want to assign it to a child group, you could assign it to that child group and it would show up in that list without having to move there. It's like where something lives is almost like less important than who has access to it. Because like you would already have, like if I'm in a top level group and I created it in the subgroup, I would already see it and it would roll up anyways. So this is just like the reverse proxy of that, saying like, I'm going to create it here and I'm going to assign it down here to this one and it will show up there or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost the same problem, but just slightly different, right? Because yeah, the location is one kind of facet of it, and then the access and basically how you tie them together is another.
Yeah.
And ownership.
Yeah.
Right now, they're kind of mixed together.
Yeah. Did you look at Jira at all, or what they were doing?
Yes. So basically, and this is new. I don't know if this is new or if I'd never seen it, but they also have a construct of an organization on cloud. Something has happened. Oh, organization. I don't know why it kicked me out. I think I changed. Oh yeah, I logged into something else. 1 second. I was inviting myself to see what that experience is like. So they also have the concept of an organization, on cloud at least. And how do I get there now? Administration? Yeah. So this is where you have users, you have groups, which are also for basically different permissions.
How does Jira Line play into that? Like, how do you sent me some info on sort of the integration a little bit, but if
It
I'm
doesn't.
it doesn't.
Mm-mm.
So how do you have like progress roll? Because I watched like an hour-long demo on Jira Line. It was showing how you could have all of your information from Jira roll up into progress reporting on your roadmap and your strategic initiatives and all that stuff, and sort of inside of Jira Align.
So basically how it works is in Jira Line is pretty like close to safe, whereas you have like a portfolio, right? So these are all different objects. You have a portfolio, you have a program, you have a team, an agile team, right? And you have work items that align to each of them, right? So teams works on stories, programs work on features, and portfolios work on epics and themes. And it's all sort of like a single hierarchy. And then you basically set up an integration between a Jira board and a AgileCraft team.
Okay,
So you
so the
basically
board,
say,
yeah.
everything that's in this board is this team's work. And you sync it all over, right? And then you also can sync epics, right? So epics in Jira end up being features in Align, which is like super confusing because then you also have epics in Align.
Yeah, yeah.
But Jira epics are really like safe features. They're not really safe epics, which is like a whole other thing where it's like people that use safe don't like Jira because they can't rename all their stuff to be like safe, right? And they spent like thousands of dollars training everyone, and then it's like wrong in Jira.
Yeah.
So that was like a whole thing. But anyway, you sync it all over, right? So you sync all over all the like team level work items to Align, and then within Align, that's where program managers do their work, and they basically build up all the hierarchy of work items there, and that's how they do all the reporting. They tie everything up.
Okay, sounds fun. So I think we want to have some basic support for that. Like that's where I think we're close to having support for that. In with we're gonna add Epic boards so that you can do that and stuff, but we don't want to go safe whole hog by any means. So I don't know. That's why I'm trying to think about keeping things as simple as possible, and we're using like small primitives where applicable. Like if we need to do teams eventually, so you can have specific permissions to different places, that's fine. You could also treat like a namespace as a team, because you can already share a namespace with another namespace. Is kind of like
Yeah, I think that's the direction I would want to go, right? If like because right now, just to like share the challenges I'm hearing about from like the sales and the TAM teams is that basically people end up creating these like members only groups, right? Where all they're doing is creating like a hierarchy of users, right? For permission. So they're basically saying like, these are my admins, these are my ops people, these are my, QA, and sharing those groups to wherever is appropriate, right? Like for repo access. But they basically have like all this stuff in those groups that they don't need, right? It's almost the same as like when people are creating issue only groups. And it's usability wise, it's weird, right? Because it's like, oh, don't touch anything. They actually put it in the description, like, don't create issues here, don't create repos here, don't do anything other than add people, and only add them at this layer. Don't create projects and add people there, because that's not how we want it set up, right? So it's solving for that, where it's like there's this very specific use case that people are trying to solve with groups that we have today, and this is the way they're doing it. So let's just make it easy for people to do that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you could, like, if we reuse a small primitive, you could have like a toggle that says like this is a people only group, and then like it
Yes.
just disables everything. But like under the hood, you don't have to create this new thing. It just is the behavior of. That's kind of how I was envisioning it. So that way, if you want to have a wiki only thing, you could have a whole tree of those, and then have like the people only groups like be sent over into there, or maybe the part of the reason why I think we have these notification only groups, people groups right now, is because they want to use the notifications like at so and so team, right? So I've seen a bunch of those too, where it's like this is a team notification group. That's the only reason they use it, is for notifications. But they would use it for issues if they could have issues in other places show up there. But since they can't, they say don't create issues here because all of our issue management happens over here, where we don't have that. So I think it's almost it will solve a lot of problems. The trick is
actually,
just,
that's a good point. Like if we had a issues and people group, right? That could essentially be like that. And we pulled issues from basically wherever that group was assigned, let's say it, right, to an issue. Then that would be like your team's space, right? That's where you manage like who's on your team and what are they working on.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like if you had one just for different permissions levels, and
You
then
could.
one that is like your team's hierarchy, and then one that is your repos or your other resources. That could get a little complicated, but I don't know.
You might though, right? Because if you have, I'm thinking like, what's a use case for a permissions only group, right? It could be like your auditors, for example. Like you say, these people have access to everything, right? So you create a group that's auditors, and then you basically will add them at the top level and they have access to everything. But those auditors are also part of their own like team, right? And they might have a board.
Maybe.
Maybe or maybe not, right? Maybe it's only for permissions.
Yeah, I think that's just where it really comes down to making it flexible, but also user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Like the other feedback I've gotten is that non-technical folks, when they come into a GitLab namespace, they have no idea what to do, and so they're like their first touch, they're completely missing out on a lot of the hidden values, like what I heard. And I think this is where the opportunities to surface all that stuff when you create the namespace or somebody comes into it for the first time, to have like a great experience based on what the namespace is being used for. So.
Oh yeah, so so Jira actually does some stuff like that, right? So it's like I'm creating a project. I might select classic just because. Yeah, so like this is pretty nice, right? So they have these. I didn't click into all of them. I don't know exactly what they do, but they're kind of like saying, oh, actually, let's do one of these, right? Like a recruitment. That's one thing, big thing that Atlassian is. So yeah, it just creates like a basic project, but they already have pre-created boards. You could do this with a blank one, right? But they're just applying a template to it, which is kind of nice. That's all it does, right? And I assume they have issues that, yeah, like special issue types.
All right. Cool. I'll put this on unfiltered if that's okay with you, and we'll take some of these things that we've been talking about in Slack and put them into an issue. I think Liam still is like unsure about this, which is very valid. But I guess just as we continue to think about it, the one thing I want to avoid is having to filter through a bunch of stuff in a place that has a bunch of things that I don't care about, just so I can see the things that I do care about, which is what is draining on me personally. And I think also like on a lot of our users is like, I can see all these things, but I don't care about 80% of them because they don't involve my team. And I don't want to have to like use filters in every view to have a meaningful like experience. Product managing.
I mean, right now we use labels, right? Like even we're feeling this, like we use labels and like that's how we do things.
Yes. I would like to get away from that. Labels serve their purpose for some things, but I think for other things we should build in better experiences. So cool. All right. I'll open up an issue to talk about this more. Let's get other folks in the working group involved. Thank you for your time. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And I appreciate the collaboration.
Yeah, same. This is fun. And yeah, I'll look at the Jira stuff and I'll put it in a similar document just so we can see what, other people are doing.
Good idea. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.